So thank you for joining us. Uh-oh. How are you guys? How are you,
Good,
Carl and Gerard? Yes? Good?
good,
Good,
man.
yeah.
Yeah. Things are well, man. Very busy period, but yeah, busy is good.
Yeah.
It is
Gerard, how
really
Same
about
here.
busy,
you?
right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Everyone's
really
making money. That's what I want to
You
hear.
know?
yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. I'm telling you, like this is like the bone of my it's like the bane of my existence. Like we are working a lot, but I'm not sure if we're working smart enough to make like lots of money. Or at least like the
Mm,
money that kind of equals out to the amount of work that we're doing.
true.
I'm not really seeing
Okay.
Well,
that right now.
to be fair, it is right now. It's probably one of the few periods where we are making a lot of money or doing quite well. So that's a blessing to be in that period. Just need to make sure I can sustain it.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. If we I think a lot of people are making more money than we ever have before. Not sure if
Definitely.
we're all making enough money, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if we're all
Yeah.
making money like in terms of the equivalent, our equivalent gender white guy. I'm not sure if that the work that's being done is equivalent of the, but hey. Okay, 1801. I'm not even gonna like try to like kind of hold things back. Thank you guys for dialing in. I see people just logging in. As you know, we start on time at the Black British Business Awards, trying to alleviate all those stereotypes. So thank you so much for joining us on time. I'm going to honor that, and we are going to start on time because I know, from what, even though I haven't had a chance to sit down and really have a chat with these two gentlemen, there's a lot to be said, and we're going to cover a lot today. I anticipate it. I'm feeling it. So
Cool.
thank you for joining us for this Mentor Mondays. This is not about me and talking. It's about you guys. I need you to send your questions in. So if you have any questions in, I will try to incorporate them into the conversation, always giving you credit, of course. I see people just logging in. I see Hanika, I see Keisha, I see Mary. Yes, what? Mary's already raising her head and everything. She already has questions. So shout out to everyone who is Olekan. Thank you so much. Wow, you guys are all like ready there. Let me know where you guys are dialing in from. Let me know throughout the conversation if you have any questions as well. And that's about it for me. Thank you guys so much for sharing and sharing your time with us and joining us today. So thank you, Gerard. Thank you, Carl. You guys
Thank
are
you for having us.
stars. So
I'm ready to
without
go.
further ado, I know exactly. Further ado, woo-hoo, talk to me, Carl. I start because you joined last.
Yeah, cool.
So
Brilliant. Yeah,
tell
I'm
us a
up for
little
that.
bit about yourself.
Yeah,
Like, why are you a finalist of the awards? Why are
I
you
guess
a success?
a success. Yeah, cool, wicked, man. First of all, thank you for having me. Really, really excited about being a part of this and being able to kind of give back and answer questions. So as those of you probably know, obviously my name is Carl Konadu, and I'm a motivational speaker, and alongside that, run a social enterprise called 2 to 3 Degrees. And essentially, what we do is we deliver personal development training in schools. And the long and short of it is, having gone through the whole UK educational system and realized that as much as Shakespeare and Pythagoras theorem is cool and it's nice to write in an exam, as the minute you leave the school gates, that stuff becomes redundant. And so we really want to go into schools and help young people develop skills like what is networking, bust some myths around that, and how do I do it properly? How do I become a great public speaker on a one-to-one, in a group basis, and on a stage? And how do I deal with failure if I failed my exams and I'm staring at a piece of paper that the whole world has told me, as a result of this, you're not going to be able to do what you want to do in life. How do I come back from stuff like that? And that's my calling. That's my passion. Just really being able to inspire people to kind of break through some of the glass ceilings that exist, but also to break through their comfort zones and just really fulfill their potential. And so, yeah, that's why I guess I'm here, and the purpose of me being here today.
So, a lot of people have a lot of amazing intentions. I would say that kind of the Black community is really good at community endeavors, at supporting our community, at creating something where, we're not getting necessarily the support that others may be getting. So why are you different? So why are you a Black British Business Awards and not a Black British Charity Award winner?
Cool. First things first, our product makes money and there's a charge for it. One of the first things that we said, as much as we have amazing social intentions, as much as we really want to help people, we have to make sure that this is something that people pay for and actually see value in. And so we don't deliver workshops and training for free. There's a price, and a lot of people will argue a premium price on our training and the work that we do, be it a motivational assembly, be it a kind of 1 hour or full day workshop, through to a 6-week program. We're going in and we're delivering stuff that a lot of the times in the corporate sector or in other sectors, people are paying thousands and thousands of pounds to go on these trainings. So for us to be delivering it in an educational sector, you know, a lot of people argue that, you know, schools don't have money and schools don't have this. Schools have money, head teachers have money. You just have to prove to them that what you're providing is of value and is actually going to help their students. So I think being able to create a sustainable social enterprise that delivers this work is probably one of the reasons why I'm in this category. And alongside that, just really being able to go after my dreams. I know that sounds really cheesy, but the truth is, you know, I remember being in a full-time role and going home from work and really just thinking to myself, you know, if I'm 30 years old, if I'm in 30 or 40 years time and my son is, or my daughter is sitting down and looking up at me and saying, you know, what did you do? What was life like for you growing up? And I just say to them, you know, I kind of just went with the motions, went with the flow. I did this career, you know, we were able to afford a mortgage, and that's why you live in this nice house, and that's all I did. I wouldn't be able to live with myself, but instead I want to be able to look back and tell stories about the things that I created, the people I impacted, and the great business that I built. And so I guess being able to, step out of my comfort zone and go after something that I want and bring it to life is probably part of the reason why I'm here.
Okay, exactly. So yes, stepping out, creating something from nothing. And then for you particularly, I know that the judges really appreciated that you were able to turn this into a social enterprise that makes money that's actually sustainable. And so, you know, a lot of people say, hey, Mel, why don't we celebrate charity? And I think that, you know, for me personally, you know, it was about you being able to create value and to kind of put a value around the work that you were contributing to society to make it a better place. And so that is, yes, certainly why you are a finalist. So thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us.
Well, I work in advertising, and you've probably watched TV, or you were online and social media, or you were looking at videos on YouTube, and you're probably like, why are these people interrupting me? Why did they choose this music? How did this get here? And the answer to those questions are, there's lots of answers to it, but I'm one of the people who's responsible for aligning brands with individuals and making sure that those brands are much more culturally relevant than they have been before. When I grew up, it was about the Cosby Show and A Different World and a couple of other types of shows where you saw sort of enterprising people of color doing their thing, living their lives, being shown as positive contributors to society. And I think as we've grown, and we've entered the diaspora, there's different types of depictions of us as the people, not just Black people, but Asians, women, etc. And I think at some level, brands have a big responsibility to depict people as we are, not as people think we are. So my role is to look after a group that we call Cultural Strategy, and I run a department at an agency called AMV BBDO, which is the largest advertising agency in the UK and probably in Europe. We have roughly 500 to 700 people working in this office, and my job is to say, X brand, this is how you should behave. These are the messages you're going to come up with. These are the types of people you're going to be aligned with. These are the places that you're going to show your message on. And then at some level, how can we give you a purpose that aligns to the current zeitgeist behaviors that are out there and how you're going to behave in the next 5 to 10 years.
So I think that sometimes advertising is a black box to people in terms of advertising and media. So, you know, can you give us some ideas or some idea of the kinds of things that you've worked on that maybe have touched our lives so that we can really bring it home to people?
Sure. I think if you think about, you can think about advertising and say, oh, it doesn't necessarily make a difference. But I think at some level, when you have creative people, creativity can drive the world, and you can actually begin to make a difference. So one of the campaigns that I've worked on was a campaign for Body Form, which is all about feminine hygiene. and how can you take a feminine hygiene product and give it a purpose. I think when our clients came to us, they said, when you look at ads for tampons, et cetera, it's either doing two things. It's using humor or it's about function, right? Like, look how stretchy this thing is. Look how absorbent it is. But really what they came to us to say is, how can we actually make a difference in a world where we're commoditized? So a lot of it was giving them a purpose, and that's to say that, hey, what we're seeing is a disconnect between how women see themselves and then also how we're talking about something as natural as, having a period. So how can we begin to show that women can be strong and persevere, and not necessarily stigmatize something that's as natural as the air we breathe. So we created a campaign called Body Form, and it's called Blood Normal. And at some level, it's saying that periods are normal and you should not be afraid of it, and you should live your life. And part of it was to launch it with a video showcasing women bleeding, and it was the first campaign to show in the world to show blood in an advertising campaign. But it also was the first to then say, okay, if women are going to bleed, here's some tactics, some tools, some help to empower women while they're on their periods. And I think part of that campaign was actually a discussion point during the time when the tampon tax law was in effect. And a lot of people had no idea what that was, but just highlighting an issue and giving it air and having reach that other people could see it, know about it, relate to it, feel something about it, actually helps contribute to getting that law changed.
So then how do you prepare for a career in advertising and media? So if you're in school right now, or if you're just coming out of school, then how would one go into a career in media and advertising? Because it's a beautiful black box, and you guys are wonderful. Because it's not, both of your organizations aren't necessarily ones that we think of when we're in school. When we think of especially my Caribbean parents, they'll be like doctor, lawyer, nurse, accountant, and so it's actually, it impacts the pipeline and the funnel, right? So how did you kind of say, okay, I'm going to go into advertising and media? For me, I'm like, I remember Angela Bauer on Who's the Boss. There was a show back in Canada called Who's the Boss, and I wanted to be Angela Bauer because she was an advertising executive. Or even Full House with they were always kind of coming up with ads. So it was actually primarily through TV that I had my exposure to the advertising industry as a job, rather than as, just kind of a consumer of their content. So how did you get into it?
Yeah, it's similar to that. I grew up in a Caribbean household. And yeah, you got to be a doctor, a lawyer. I thought I was going to sell drugs or play basketball. But that was just what I saw. But I think actually Eddie Murphy changed my life, right? Boomerang, and he was a black advertising executive. And I think Carl touched on it earlier, of saying you don't necessarily know what you can do if you don't have exposure to it growing up. And so I didn't necessarily know what advertising was, but I did know that most of the big businesses would not come to my neighborhood because they didn't believe in a market, right? So at the time, it was about like Starbucks and other places, and they didn't want to come to, and I grew up in a place called Jamaica, Queens. They didn't want to come to Jamaica because they didn't think that we had enough money as a community to support that. And I've seen money coming in and out of that community, so I knew it wasn't true. And then when I started to look into it, actually the people who were making those ads and making those decisions had no connection to the community or understood the identity of it. But I knew I didn't want to wear a suit to work, and I knew I wasn't going to be a finance person. So how else could I use some of my abilities and skills, which was writing and talking and designing, to the better. And so when I did some research, I found that advertising was a great area. You could make films, you could design websites, you could make mobile apps, you could do social media, and that just opened up a whole new world for me. And that's how I began to get into the communications industry in advertising.
And so, Carl, did you set up, in school, did you say, hey, I'm going to set up a social enterprise? That's what's up? I work.
I wish I was that. Yeah, I wish I was that much of a visionary when I was younger. But Gerard touched on a really important point there about exposure. And I think I was reflecting on this the other day actually, and I was thinking, growing up, a lot of people, including myself, wanted to be the next like David Beckham, Dwight York, Andy Cole, or we wanted to be the next Dizzy Rascal. And what happened is, because I got to about between the age of probably about 16 to 24, the exposure to things changed rapidly because of the technology. So we started to get access to people like Eric Thomas and Les Brown and these huge people, motivational speakers that were unheard of before. And that had a big, big impact on me. I didn't know it at the time, but going through university and listening to Eric Thomas and him helping me get over, me failing my A-levels a year before, started to really spark something for me. But I think growing up, one thing I did realize, and I think Steve Jobs always talks about how you can only really connect the dots when you look backwards. So now that I look backwards, it always makes sense that when I was trying to be a professional footballer, I would always be the captain of my team. I was always take up the leadership responsibilities, to the point where even if I wasn't getting played in a team, I would stand on the sidelines and be cheering the team on. And, if we just lost the game 4-0, I'd be the only one in the coach saying, don't worry, guys, come on. Everyone be like, shut up, Carl, man. You know what I mean? Through various things, I then started volunteering in my local community and started doing stuff with the British Youth Council or the Safer London Foundation, around just galvanizing young people and teenagers and getting us to have our voice heard, and really just doing that training and that teamwork element. And so lo and behold, when I got to uni and I met my business partner, Aziz Minot, we were both so passionate about personal development. We kind of just on a whim said, you know what, all this energy and this buzz and this excitement that we've got, let's put it into something. And by this time, we both started making our careers. So I studied international relations and politics. So I was working for the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I had recently done projects in like Trinidad and Tobago, Sri Lanka, Uganda. And so to the outside world, I was working in the city, wearing my suit every day, getting to fly around the world. They was like, yeah, you're doing it, you're killing it. And the salary that I was on, I was like, yeah, I am doing it, I'm killing it. But then there's always that kind of, that void inside that tells you that, that you can do a little bit more. This might not necessarily be your purpose. And after that conversation with Aziz, at first we said, let's write a book and give people that energy. And I was like, why don't we just start a business? Why don't we just go in there and start delivering ourselves? We're both really passionate. If we do loads of public speaking and volunteering on the sides, how can we take this thing and make it something special? And so that's how 2 to 3 Degrees was started. But like I was saying, when I look back, I realized that I can connect the dots in that I was always wanting to do public speaking. I was always taking up leadership and training, but also that exposure element I think was huge as well. Being able to see the likes of Eric Thomas, Les Brown, and Tony Robbins and other motivational speakers out there and see that and think, you know what, I love that. That looks really exciting. I'm really passionate and I take something from it. So potentially I want to then go and do it as well.
So we have some questions that have come up while you guys are talking. And so I got you, Ola Lakan. Don't you worry, I'm there. So here's some questions. Did you guys start by going all out self-employed to set up your empire? That would be you, Carl. Or did you do this on the side coupled with your full-time job? And if you went all out self-employed, how did you cope with financing initially?
Yeah, cool. Short answer is no, I didn't go all out self-employed. Both myself and my business partner had careers. And so we were both working alongside building 2 to 3 Degrees and using our annual leave and basically our time after work and weekends to build the business. And when we were called in to deliver a workshop, we just take a holiday. And we did that for about a year until eventually I just got this bug where I was like, you know what, I'm going into the office and I'm sitting down with my manager and she's talking to me about stuff I need to be doing at work. And all I can think about is my business. And so I didn't really want to be in a position where I was still giving myself 50% to my work and 50% to my business. I wanted to be able to give 100% to something. So I took that leap. In hindsight, what I realized is, so a lot of people warned me at the time. One, we didn't necessarily have enough money for me to take the leap. And we didn't, it potentially could have been a bit too early, but there's always a difference. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got from my uncle at the time was that everybody's logic is different. So though you might need you might need 50 grand in the account to show that you've got salary for X amount of months before you take the leap, someone else might need 10 and someone else might need 0. Everybody's tolerance for risk and the way they operate is very different. Yeah, I would advise people, we built up some reserves. Obviously, we we were going for a year. So we built up some reserves. We did have money in it. But for me, I was more excited about actually getting started and being able to give my time and prove that it could work and sustain me full time to the extent where we can start employing people. So yeah, I think that was a bit of the journey. We did it for a year. I took the leap. We weren't necessarily in a major, amazing financial position before I took the leap, but I was prepared to take that risk. And so whatever area or position you are at in your life, the context will paint whether you're able to take that leap. So for example, at 26 years old, I don't have a family that rely on me. I don't have a wife who I have to pay a mortgage with, etc., etc. I even still get the opportunity to live in SE1 with my parents. So I'm probably afforded a lot more space to be able to take that leap, whereas somebody else's context might be different. But I think the main thing you have to kind of look at is, what is the purpose behind what you're trying to do? For me, it was about building a legacy and going all in. And so that was the only option for me. But for other people, there's loads of other options. You can work on it for 3 years before you decide to do that and make the finances work.
Yeah. Just jumping in as well. I think there's a thing to think about. There's that fire that Carl described of like starting something and doing it. But I think if you can have that fire and apply it in different ways. There's entrepreneurship and then there's intrapreneurship, and you can sort of be your entrepreneur and own your own thing externally, but you can also do that within the context of an organization and create your own thing there. And I think there's benefits and sort of minuses to each of them, but you have to find what works for you. Some people like having the security, knowing that you have a company behind you and the resources, and then you can use that sort of weight in order to get what you want done, and you can start a whole team and manage basically like it's your own business. Others really crave the independence that they have, and I think you have to find what works for you, and it's different for everyone.
It is. It's so different. With the Black British Business Awards, that started well before I left EY. And, I got this great advice when I was starting them off to say, hey, you need to turn your employer into your clients when you're leaving and when you're about to leave. And so EY, of course, was our first sponsor. But I would say, though, in regards to all of the small businesses that kind of come, all of the entrepreneurs and startups, even when I just finished judging the Startup Awards last week, the UK Startup Awards, and these guys are, they have their finances on lock. It's a long endeavor. It's not just kind of pop up and get have a great idea and get some capital or kind of venture capital or get some investment. Usually there's a really hard slog while they're getting money somewhere else, particularly in the area for BA people and for women, because we don't get that kind of automatic financing that others do get. Then what happens is that you find we are working for not just the money, but we're also working for the credibility and the comfort that it gives us because we're getting experience in the workplace. We're getting experience in the business world. So it really depends on your own path. But very rarely do I see people kind of jump out and say, hey, I'm going to start a business. What up from school when we're talking about people and talking about ethnic minorities, talking about women even. They don't do that. They get kind of credibility, experience, working for others. Then they start kind of saving their pennies on the side, all of that goodness, and then it takes them a little bit longer to manifest their business independently.
Yeah,
but thank you for that question, brother. Thank you for that. Don't even try it, guys, because we haven't talked about all this other stuff. That was there are questions coming in. We have a lot of questions to deal with.
All right, cool.
I know you guys want long-winded answers. See, I'm not Carla.
All right, cool. I'll keep it short. I'm
gonna try to hold it down for you. So in regards to, back to Gerard. So yes, now cultural strategist.
Yes.
People still are like, Kalisha's like, cultural strategist, still not. Do you tell people basically how to be Black or how to talk to women? Like, and do you do it? Yeah. Do you do it based on your own identity, or do you do it on behalf of everyone?
So it's a good question. I think when we call cultural strategy, depending on who you talk to, you might think like, oh, they're for like ethnic diversity, or it's all about sort of minorities, but actually it's not. It's a step above that. And I'd say basically my job is kind of being a brand therapist and a cultural architect. So think of it as a stock market. what are the issues that are going on in the world right now? So you could say it's Brexit, it's political issues, it might be modern masculinity. That's happening in culture. And if brands are not aware of that, a whole point of them being relevant to people falls down. And I think when brands come to agencies like mine, they've come for one particular reason. They failed to connect with an audience. And so that's why they need to hire an agency that knows that audience better than anyone else. And I think when you think of brand strategy, it was started here in the UK. And it was really from a brand out, so a top-down point of view. When you had, think of it, 3 TV channels. You had like a TV, you had radio, and you had print, and basically the name of the game was reach. Well, now you have way more channels. People have way more influence as individuals. You can begin to understand how people are thinking because they actually will tell you so, right? Using social media and other channels at their disposal. And what you're seeing is that the digital and the online space is actually shaping culture much faster and more rapidly than ever before. And so how do businesses, brands, agencies, et cetera, stay abreast of that and begin to make bets? So when I mentioned the stock market, my job is to look at the issues that are going on in the world and start to make bets and then align brands to some of those bets. So for instance, you start thinking of British Telecom, which is one of our clients. They'll say, what should we do? How do we relate to people? Well, have you looked at the issue of loneliness in the UK? For such a big company that's out there that can be everywhere, how can you be there for lots of different people in different ways? And therefore, we did lots of different research, talked to different people, went into their homes. So it's a bit of a cultural anthropology, it's branding, and it's also therapy as well. And there's nothing minority based or using like my culture, although I bring my full self to work, and that is definitely going to influence what I do. But overall, it's meant to say like, this is what's out there in the world, and this is how brands, et cetera, can begin to be more relevant. Yeah.
And so then how they tap into it. So you guys have told us a lot about what you do and what you have done, but we have some difficult questions, not difficult questions, but they're not as easy, just designed to bring out kind of the authenticity of your experience, not to put you on the spot. But one question that we always ask is, okay, what's the advice that you always give, but you don't follow yourself? And why?
Great question.
Yeah, that's a good one. Carl, you want to take this one?
Because what happens, right?
Yeah,
when we have panels, when we have things like, just panels or whatever, we're like, yeah, you should do this, and you should do this. And then you're just like, really? Is that what you want? So more about, and it's also to kind of really flesh out the difficulties of success, to say, okay, I know what I should be doing, but I still don't do it. So for example, last week we had someone say, hey, I know I should be budgeting. I know I should be looking at my, my ingoings, my incomings, my outgoings. I know, I should be allocating my money in this way, particularly because I'm in financial services, but that's what's up. I know I don't do it, and so so what are those kinds of things, the things that you should be doing? You would tell a person coming after you, yeah, you should do this, but the difficulty is real.
I can start. I'll go first. So you hear this advice, follow your dreams. And I think it's probably the worst advice you could have, right? Like your dreams mean nothing. Like a dream is basically something without follow through. And I think at some level, like I would say, follow your dreams, but the day-to-day of life gets in the way sometimes. And so, like I gotta like go to work, I gotta have clients, I gotta all these things. At some level, I put myself last, and I don't necessarily take care of myself. I'm not actually following my dreams. So living proof is like, here we are today. And I think like Carl started mentioning it a little bit earlier, but like, what is your personal mission? Why are you on this earth? And what is that passion? I think what it is like, don't follow your dreams, follow your passions, and then let your passions lead you. And I think once you follow your passions, you can never go astray. You'll never work a day in your life. And you will be much more purpose driven. And you can never be led astray as well. And I think at some level, I have to follow that advice as well. But sometimes life gets in the way.
So then what about the practical of that though? So follow your dreams is quite esoteric, right? It's quite kind of, ooh, follow your dreams. I'm talking about your day to day, yo, I know I should be doing this on the daily, but I don't. Or like habits.
Well,
I've
you
got
gotta,
something.
yeah. You want to go, Carl?
Yeah. Delegate. Delegate is something that I always talk to people about doing. I don't necessarily talk about it passionately because I know I'm not great at it, but I do advise it and talk about the importance of building a great team. But it's something that I really struggle with because I've started to develop this habit of thinking that I'm the only person who can do the job to the standard that I want to do it. And that is such a bad habit. But I find that a lot of high performers tend to develop that because we spend so much time in our own head. So you end up starting to believe your own source. And when understand your source is good, but it's not that good. Like, you know, you make mistakes just like everybody else. And there are people who are much better skilled at doing certain things than you are. And so just to give a really, really short scenario, we were about to recruit and go out for a couple of new interns, and we got some applications, and I read through the applications. I was like, these are not good enough. Let's go back out. And my business partner was like, no, they're fine. You have to give people a chance to grow up to a certain level or give people a platform and they'll show you who they are. And I was really adamant that we needed to go out and get people who are superstars. We needed to build a team of Avengers. And she was like, no, trust me, just give them an opportunity. We did, and they were absolutely amazing and helped us develop tenfold, you know. So that's just a short example of, you know, always feeling like you either need to do things yourself or feeling like you just need to be around superstars when you just need to delegate sometimes. And not everybody has to be the super passionate founder who goes out and sells the story. Some people are just really great with admin or really great with logistics, and that's their job and they'll get it done. So delegation is definitely one for me.
Yeah, you got to step back to step up. Like you really have to take your hand off of stuff so that you're able to put your hand to something else that's bigger. I learned that the hard way. It's tough. We don't do that often enough. We do. Sometimes we even pride ourselves for being down in the weeds and down in the detail.
Yeah.
You know, I had to learn the hard way. I was like, actually, I'm not supposed to know what the table plan is for the awards. But that's not what I'm talking about right now. You know, I got to know the principles of table planning, certainly. But in terms of me kind of knowing I know where this person's sitting, like that's just not where I'm supposed to be right now. And so it's really tough. Actually, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I think part of it is being humble to know your weaknesses. And at some level, you think you've reached a certain point of success that you should know something, or you can't delegate away because you're the only one. But I think strength is in generosity, right? And the more generous you are, and the more honest you are, the better you can be. So at some level, I've been learning that lesson every day, and the humbleness to say, I don't know the answer, but I've got great people around me who can, and empower them is a strength that I think will go much farther. And I have to remind myself that all the time.
Totally.
We have questions coming in. Mary, you've raised your hand for a question. We only take written questions here instead of just, you know, kind of turning on the mics. That's a long thing. So definitely please type. Ooh wee. Yeah. Oh wow, Mary is on it, boy. She already typed that question up. Okay, we're there, Mary. We're there. How? Wow, people are like, all the questions are killing me. It's actually very rare that we have two men, and we only have men on the panel. And so I'd like to talk to you about, I guess, in regards to who do you run to, who do you go to when things are, you know, don't go well, like in terms of who is your squad. So, you know, women kind of talk about your squad. We talk a lot, even in our Instagram profiles, you see my squad's better than yours, that kind of thing. And so, but then on the other hand, we see with the Women of the World Festival at the South Bank Center, we also had the Being a Man Festival. And that's where we explore, you know, that the biggest killer of men under the age of 40 is suicide. And so, you know, I don't want to get too serious, but I wanted to talk to you guys about, well, who, you know, your support and kind of the differing levels of support. Like, who do you speak to when things are going wrong? Who wants to answer that? Actually, you know what, Gerard? You know what? I'm going to let Gerard to answer that really quickly because I know I'm going to go to you first because, quite frankly, we also met your wife. And everyone, like, but even for Gerard was one of the finalists, but I'm not gonna lie, everyone who sat at his table more so talks about his wife. Like, they're just like, so.
Does that all the time. Yeah, I think for me, my wife, Teresa, she's definitely my inspiration. She's the wind beneath my wings. She's the person I confide to. Because she's just smarter than me, which I cop to every time I'm in the room with her. I'm the dumbest person in the room, which that's one of the reasons why I love her and trust her as well. And she's from a totally different field than I, so she has a fresh perspective on things, which is great. But I think the other sort of squad goals that I have is not necessarily other people, but the internet and podcasts. Like, there's no reason that there's no shortage of information that's out there, and no shortage of knowledge that you cannot tap into. So while you can read books and like learn that way, I think you can also ascertain knowledge and experience from other people's experiences, and podcasts is a great way to do that. And when I'm seeking a hard place to go, I dig in the archives for podcasts, and man, I've got all the advice from the best people in the world without even having to talk to them. And then I can go talk to my wife and like, what do you think about this? So we bounce things off of each other as well.
Well, we're going to return to that. In the back of your mind, think of podcasts that you would recommend, okay? In the back of your mind. So, Carl, who can I run to? Who do you run to? Escape. Who do you run to when things go wrong? Like when
Yeah, my business partner. We started this together, Aziz Minot. Funny enough, there's no coincidence that she's a woman. I think it was 2015. I did a TED talk around the influence of women in creating men as leaders. And I talked about how my mum and my twin sister and my grandma had such a big impact on me. And then when Aziz and I met at university, we ended up starting a business together. But yeah, it's like we're so alike, but yet we complement each other so well. And so having that person to be able to go to and talk to about business problems, personal problems, etc., is hugely key. And I wouldn't have been able to build 2 to 3 degrees to where it is right now without having kind of my right hand to be able to build it with me. So that's definitely Aziz. Alongside that, I think business-wise, specifically related to the business, we've put together a team of advisors, of people that we go to for very specific things. And so we've looked at someone for legal, someone for comms, someone for sales and education, etc. And so going to them with people for specific things. And I think what I've learned over time is the more specific you can be about the request, the easier it is to get the answer that you want. And so that's with regards to business. And then obviously realizing that you have different mentors for different things. And so obviously my faith is a big part of my life. And so obviously my prayer time and the word itself is obviously really, really helpful, but also having spiritual mentors to be able to get me over certain hurdles and certain seasons, as well as having mentors that are more specifically based on finance, or more specifically based on kind of just growing up as a young man in Southeast London. So yeah, quite a few different people, and there will all be different levels of intensity or vulnerability that they will take, you know what I mean? But yeah, those are definitely my go-to people.
I hope that answers your questions, Mary and Ola, because yes, I have the same. They asked both of us in terms of starting up a team and who are advisors when we first started out, and my answer is the exact same as Carl, that I do have it's a full complement of mentors, or it's also about being very specific in regards to my team as well. Like, who's really good at this is not going to be very good at this. I remember one time, in terms of a spiritual mentor, I was so tired because the awards were taking so much time, and I remember I spoke to him. I went to Toronto and we had a long talk, and he was just like, you know what, Mel, you got to remember what happened with Samson and Delilah. Like, Samson was just doing all kinds of stuff. He was like, yeah, battling all these people, winning all these battles, and then he needed to rest, and he rested his head in Delilah's lap, and his head was cut. His hair was cut. And I was like, yo, like, that's deep. I was like, I didn't even know what was going on. I was like, what kind of story is this? You're just like, I don't know what kind of mentoring this is, but I'm not really understanding what you're saying right now. He was just like, this is, it was my friend Chris, and he was like, look, you got to be careful where you rest your head. When you get so tired that you don't even know where you're resting, where you're getting your information, where you're getting kind of your advice and your spiritual food, like you start to take in the wrong thing, or you start to rest in the wrong place, and all of a sudden, like all your strength is gone. And I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still processing that one. But what I'm saying, I'm still processing. It's deep though, right? And I was just like, but I needed someone to kind of come at me in that way, you know. And there's only a few people in the world who'll be able to come at me that way. And so I suggest that you know, and it's you don't want it to be, you want it to be authentic and organic in a sense. So you don't want to kind of approach people off the street and say, and then approach also like the biggest, you know, oh yes, Oprah, please be my spiritual mentor. Like that's a bit tough. She's in the business. But you do have to, when you start to gel with people in that way, when you're out, and it does mean you have to go out a lot and talk to people and get to know people, then you start to just kind of, you keep the good people close, and then you just kind of focus on building relationship with those people in an organic way. So pretty much organically go out and meet more people, and then you start to build your squad and you build your team rather than going to the top person.
I would add that there's different things. There are mentors, but then there are sponsors as well, and they actually play different roles in your lives. And I think it's really important to understand that. Like a mentor is someone you can go to, like kind of like what Melanie's talking about. Like they know you really well. They can offer you advice. But a sponsor actually is the hand that pushes you forward. Maybe they're much more senior than you, and they can put you in positions of success. And so when Carl and Melanie are talking about finding your board of advisors, your Justice League in a sense, you have to have different people with different roles on there. And you want some sponsors who you might not necessarily see every day, but like can put you in the room. But then you want some mentors that can give you the good advice, etc. And you should diversify that mix.
Exactly. Like my sponsors work for me when I'm not in the room. My mentors work with me like when we're having a conversation and we're going back and forth, but sponsors work for you when you guys actually aren't together. Either I mention my sponsor and it opened doors for me, or my sponsor mentions me and brings me into a room where I didn't have access before. They advocate on your behalf. And so very clear kind of difference. And sponsors are quite tough. And what I mean by that is it's a long sales funnel. Like it's not something, sponsors don't just kind of be my sponsor. No, they pretty much have to see evidence of your work, and they have to buy into what you're doing for them to be able to kind of, you know, support you when you're not in the room. Like they'll bring you up when you're not there. They're selling you when you're not there, whether it be for your work or your work allocations, or whether it be for kind of your businesses and new ventures. So kind of going back to, so we kind of covered a lot there, because usually we talk about where do you get your advice from. So I'm not going to kind of go into that. But in terms of goals and planning and like, do you guys set goals on a regular basis, or do you kind of plan, you know, what you're doing with your time? We're talking about kind of time management in the short term and the long term. How do you guys handle and how do you guys achieve your goals practically? Did you guys just kind of end up here? Like, yeah, I'm here. Or was it something that you worked at? And then how did you work at it? How did you kind of keep the goals alive? And I'm still taking questions from everybody. Don't worry. Bring them in. Gerard,
you want to go first? Or you want me to go?
Go for it, man.
Like we're talking about the practice of setting and achieving goals rather than the goal. If that makes sense.
Yes, cool.
Yeah.
Wicked. Funny enough, the sermon on Sunday, he ended it by saying, don't forget that your time management is actually a question of your integrity and your character. And everyone was just a bit like, whoa, damn. I know, right? And he ended and he was like, yeah, part 2 next Sunday. I was like, oh gosh. But the reason why I say that is because what I realized is when I look back, I think part of the reason why we've been able to hit certain goals, albeit I haven't necessarily hit every goal that I wanted to in my life, but hit certain goals, is because your time basically says who you are. And so really, really simple and practical things is, there's no way in this world that you can have a smartphone in this day and age and not be using the diary and the calendar function to basically manage your time and your life. Like every Sunday evening, just sitting down and looking forward and saying, at least for the next 7 days, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing from hour to hour and time to time. So that's a very basic format. And alongside that, I think for me, I set yearly goals, and for the business, we set yearly goals. And one thing that we've really started to do is, once we've set the goal, starting to ask ourselves, okay, what are we going to need to do to achieve that goal? So kind of that plant, cultivate, and harvest theory, because a lot of people plant the seed around what they want to achieve, but then just expect to harvest, but don't necessarily cultivate in the middle. And so the cultivate is like the stuff that what we're going to have to do on a weekly basis. Breaking it all the way down to how many sales calls are we going to have to make on a daily basis? How many schools do we want to have within our network and on our newsletter within the next 3 months? And, how many events or meetings do we want to go to? And when we go to those events or meetings, how many potential clients are we leaving with? You can put it all the way down to that grain, or you can be a little bit more theoretical with it. But ultimately, breaking down what you need to do to get to the goal, I think for me is the most important part, because when it's a cold Tuesday night and you've 6 p.m. and you've got home and you've set yourself the goal of, I'm going to lose 5K by the end of 6 months, you're sitting on that couch like, I'm not going anywhere. But if you set that goal and said, I need to hit 4 times this week, that's your 4 times, and you know exactly what you're working towards. So for me, it's being really clear about what you need to do to achieve those goals and reiterating those as well. So we have, I guess we can call them monthly or quarterly strategy days, where we go back to those goals that we set ourselves and we look at them and we say, okay, are we on track to achieve them? Number one. But number two, do we still want to achieve those goals? Are these still the things that we're working towards? So outside of the kind of like the 8 a.m. phone calls that we have every day, there's those specific days that are set for the goal setting.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
just to jump in on that, I think Carl's right. I think my point of view is a little different in terms of like, I never set like big arching things. I never like set to be here. I think what it is like to chunk things down. So I don't necessarily make goals that are like grand. It's like things that, because then it can be unattainable for me anyway. So the smaller and the more attainable, the better, more likely I am to actually get them done. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it's about the objective and thinking 3 steps ahead. So if my large objective is X, I know I have to do Y, Z, and W to get there. And so I can think backwards from that way. And I'm like, okay, so if I know I have to go grocery shopping, I got to make a turkey, then what are the things I got to do in order to make that turkey delicious, right? And so then I'll have tangible things that I can say, okay, I got to go get a turkey that fits in the oven, or I need some of these seasonings, or I need that. And then I can make that turkey. But if I start to do it so big and it becomes sort of like out there, then there's no way that I'll achieve that goal. So like, for instance, for me, I worked in PR, but I wanted to be more creative. I said, what are the best creative shops out there? And who can I meet to help me get there? And that's how I started working back. And then I said, okay, now I'm in a creative area. What's the best branding agency out there in the world? And I said, okay, I'm gonna go meet people who work at that place. And those were achievable objectives.
Yeah, see, and so it's about making it kind of achievable, executionable kind of chunks. Really, yeah. Both of you guys share that same thing. So, boy, we have some quick fire. We won't be able to get to all of the questions because all y'all started sending from 6 to 6:30. We didn't get any questions, but now all of a sudden y'all are getting, only Ola came through, but now all of a sudden you guys are getting all hot, sending all these questions. So I'm gonna try to get through all these questions, but I know I won't. So for apologies in advance if I don't get to your question. Books. What is the book that you have gifted the most?
Where's the book that we've been gifted the most, or that we would gift the most?
The book that you have gifted the most.
The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
Really? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Just,
It basically breaks down. Yeah, it basically, for me, really broke down a lot of that theoretical, motivational stuff that's out there. That's really, really great. And talked about, but this is what you're actually practically going to need to do to get there. And so basically, it uses a story of 2 men who their father was dying, and their father was a really, really rich man. And basically, he said to them, you have 2 options. You have this £1 million pot here, or you have 1 penny doubled every single day for the rest of your life. Which one would you choose? And one son chose the £1 million and then started a business and then blew the £1 million. And the other son chose the 1 penny doubled every day for the rest of his life. And obviously just harnessing the power of compound interest. And it basically talked about how everything that you need to do in order to achieve success is actually easy to do, but it's also easy not to do. And so being really specific about that plant, cultivate, and harvest theory. And just getting things done.
Okay, sweet. So the Slight Edge. Yeah. And then Gerard?
I think I'll go the other way and say, like, I read a lot of books, but honestly, I'm not a reader, but I like to listen. So the
Okay, so
podcast.
actually, yes, you mentioned podcasts before. So what's the
Yeah,
podcast that you tell the most people about?
it's hard. It's like, who's your favorite child? I love them all. But the the one that I love is Tim Ferriss, and he has a show called The Tim Ferriss Show, and he wrote a book called With the 5 Hour Work Week. But basically, he interviews top performers in their industry, and it's all about the tools, the tips, and ways that they can overcome in order to perform. And I learned so much from his interviews. Another one that I like is called Big Questions by Cal Fussman. And Cal Fussman.
Cal. I love
Yeah.
Cal Fussman.
He's an amazing man. He's a great interviewer, and he can actually pull out a lot of the things that you don't even know that's there. And what I like about Cal Fussman's interviews is that he takes people from the left and from the right, and no matter what your sort of political leaning or where you're from, there's a story to be told, and he's able to pull out those stories. And you can learn a lot just from walking in other people's shoes. So those are the two that I probably really love. And then maybe the last one is I like history, and I'm looking at it. It's called Hardcore History, and basically it's all about war. And I think you can learn a lot about how people go to war, what they wore, the spoils of war that they do, the decisions that they make, and how we became who we are today, just from how we engage in battle. And it's quite gruesome stuff that you can hear there, but like it makes sense of like why we are here and what we do today.
Okay, so it's the Tim Ferriss Show, Cal Fussman, and
what was the title of it?
Hardcore History. Just looking at war.
Yep.
How we war. And you're right. You probably see a lot. You know, I always say I don't see people's character when things are going well. I see people's character when, you know, they're up against it and they got to make some difficult decisions. And those difficult decisions, those are the ones that really kind of show the capability, the potential of a heart. Woohoo! So,
can I do a quick shameless plug? Just to say.
Not yet. We do have the shameless plug start at the end when we say what
No, it's relevant to the books.
Oh, okay.
No, just to say, on my website, I've got a reading list of all the personal development and self-help books that you might need. So just go to Konadu.com and you get it.
Okay, but I want the ones that you absolutely like love and have read yourself. Have you read them all yourself?
Yes, all of them. I wouldn't have put it there if I haven't. No way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I know. I think someone's recommended that we do a kind of books of the BBBA awards because there's a whole lot of book recommendations that come out, but I'm just like, whoa, that's a lot. I'm just here for the Mentor Monday. Yes, we will put it out. Zara, I think she's listening, so we can plug Carl's book list.
Can I just say one more book that I read? It's Meditation by Marcus Aurelius. I don't know if you guys have read that, but that book is amazing. It's amazing if you're into Stoicism. It's principles of how you live your life from one of the best who have ever done it. And it's basically journaling, and it's him journaling in his quiet times. Yeah, you've got both of them there. But Marcus Aurelius is the man, and you can learn a lot from his experiences as well. And it's really easy to read.
Most definitely. No, I am a stoicist. So that was one of the areas of philosophy that I studied for one of my master's degrees. So I'm a philosopher at heart, and I love stoicism. You're right. It's just practical ethics. It's practical, like how do you live and how do you get better and how do you just kind of go through life. So it's and it's nice and easy as well. And Tim Ferriss is one of the most famous stoicists of our time right now. So is Ryan Halliday, if you guys are looking for those kinds of books. And yes, and you know what? You would recognize that question of, you know, what book do you gift the most from Tim Ferriss, because that's one of his classic interview questions. He asks it in every interview. And these are all of his interviews. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So, my friends. Okay, so tell us what we can look forward to, because we're kind of closing down to the time, but what could we look forward to from you in the next few months, years, hours? It could be like what your goal is for your life, or it could be something as simple as, well, actually next week I'm on a panel. So what can we look forward to? If like the audience is gonna, step away from the Black British Business Awards mic and go right to the Gerard Crichlow mic, what would he be looking for?
Okay. So a couple of things. I'm gonna chunk that down. My whole personal mission in life is to use creativity to move humanity. So you'll start to see me take kids from the Saturday Club and take them around the advertising world, the design world, the architecture world, and do master classes with them to expose them to what a creative life might be. And that's before they take the GCSEs. The other thing I'll be doing is judging lots of the awards shows. So Carl kind of alluded to it earlier, but if you can't see it, you can't be it. So my whole part of my mission that I mentioned is to put myself out there so other people can see people like myself doing it, and maybe they can imagine themselves. So I'll be judging at Cannes, which is the creative industry and advertising world's like highest award, but I'll also be judging at the D&AD show. And I'll be coming up with a new campaign for a brand that's all about taking over the fashion and the style world and collaborating with some of the biggest people in that area to kind of shake up the fashion and style world. So lots of little things coming up, but big things as well. And it's all about opening the doors for a new generation of talent who values creativity.
Woohoo! My jazz hands. We will look out for you, because that is, yeah, Ken's line it's pretty much like the Oscars of advertising. Really. No, it really is. It's it's what we like. Every single agency is down in France, and it's so being a judge is no small feat, my people. It's actually a dirty big pat on the back, big old dirty applause for you. So that's absolutely fantastic. It's brilliant. All right, so Carl, talk to me.
It's amazing, Gerard, man. Thank you for sharing. I think for me, I actually just sent out yesterday on the socials that I'm doing my first public event on goal setting, a goal setting seminar early 2019. So I'm really, really excited for that. A lot of people have been asking through the kind of motivational videos that I do for me to start doing more public stuff. And so that's going to be big for next year. And then hopefully be doing those bi-monthly around kind of goal setting, finding your purpose, leadership, etc. My first book, I finished the first draft the other day. It's called First Class. It's about how to get a first class degree and use those principles to be first class in life. So that's going to be really exciting for some of the students that we work with. And alongside that, business-wise, we just won our first tender to deliver an employability program in the Borough of Westminster across a couple of youth clubs and some schools as well. So yeah, thanks, man. That's really, really cool, really exciting. So that's a pilot. So once we deliver that successfully, we'll hope to scale up and deliver it more often with more organizations and really just level up. So 2019, we're going into it with a real big bang. Really excited about things coming, man.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. Like that's a whole lot. So then we'll be able to give everyone your links as well, so that they're able to kind of keep in contact, and then be able to see when the Goals Club is happening, because I'm all about goals. And then
Awesome.
Also the well, we'll wait for the book. I won't give them pressure on you. That's a whole lot.
Yeah.
Writing a book is not easy. You're like, when's that book coming out? I told you I just review the book. It's not like that. It's not like that. Oh, honestly, guys, thank you so much for sharing and coming and sharing yourselves and sharing your light. And so you guys know, now everyone knows who these gentlemen are. They're absolutely amazing. So thank you for coming tonight. And if you have any questions, just go to them directly. Don't send it to me.
Can I just say one thing
that you may have?
Can I just say one thing? I come on these to inspire others, but honestly, I have to say I'm inspired by everyone else, Carl and Melanie as well, and also inspired by the questions that we get. So I want to say thank you guys for joining us and inspiring us to keep going and doing what we're doing, because I've learned a lot just in this hour with you guys, especially from my fellow panelists as well. So this has been great.
Isn't it? I know, honestly, it's such a joy to do these things. You guys are amazing. Like the questions that come out, yeah, there's some you guys don't get to see all this, my panelists, but there's a whole lot of gratitude that comes out when you are answering some of the questions before they even get a chance to ask them, right, Ola? So, yeah. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And yes, we will send out the notes. So you'll have all of the contact details and the follow-up information, and also the replay as well, so that you guys can share it over the next few. Yeah, you'll probably get that somewhere tomorrow or the next day as well. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. You've been amazing.
No, you guys are amazing. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight, and thank you guys so much for sharing tonight as well. Okay. Bye, everyone.